For 18 years, my grandson believed I abandoned him. Until his birthday. The first time my grandson looked me in the eyes, he wasn't even a year old. He reached his tiny hand toward me, smiling with complete trust, unaware that it would be the last time he would ever see me for the next 18 years. I still remember the warmth of his little fingers wrapping around mine. I whispered, "Grandpa will always love you, Ethan." He laughed. A few hours later, my own son slammed the front door in my face and shouted the words that destroyed my life. "If you ever come near my family again, I'll call the police." Those words echoed in my head every single day for the next 18 years. People say time heals everything. They're wrong. Time only teaches you how to carry pain without collapsing. For 18 birthdays, 18 Christmas mornings, 18 school graduations I never attended, I lived with a photograph. Just one photograph. It showed little Ethan sitting on my lap, wearing a blue sweater while trying to steal my reading glasses. Every night before bed, I looked at that picture and wondered. Does he remember me? Does he think I stopped loving him? Or, has someone told him a story that erased me completely? I didn't know then that the lie being told was far worse than anything I could imagine. The nightmare began when my wife, Margaret, passed away. She had been my best friend for 42 years. Cancer stole her in less than 6 months. After her funeral, I noticed something changing inside my son, Daniel. He stopped calling. He stopped visiting. When he finally did come over, it wasn't because he missed me. He wanted something. "Dad," he said while pretending to smile. "You don't need this big house anymore." I looked around the dining room where Margaret and I had raised him. Every scratch on the wooden floor held a memory. "No," he blinked. "What? I'm not selling the house." His smile disappeared. "You'll be alone." "I already am." His wife, Claire, spoke before he could. "It would be better for everyone." Better for everyone. Those words sounded harmless. They weren't. Within weeks they began convincing relatives that I was becoming forgetful. Then unstable. Then dangerous. I had no idea they were building a story against me. One Sunday afternoon, Daniel brought baby Ethan over. The little boy crawled across my living room, laughing while chasing my old Labrador. For a few precious hours, I forgot every argument. I believed we were becoming a family again. Then Claire disappeared upstairs. 5 minutes later she screamed. "Liar." Everyone ran. She stood inside my bedroom holding Margaret's jewelry box. It was open. She looked directly at me. "My bracelet is gone." I froze. "What bracelet?" "The diamond bracelet Daniel gave me. I've never seen it." She burst into fake tears. I knew this would happen. Daniel turned toward me. "Dad, tell me you didn't." "I didn't." Claire cried harder. "I can't believe you'd steal from your own family." I couldn't even speak. The accusation was so ridiculous that my brain refused to process it. Then Daniel searched my dresser. Inside the bottom drawer, he found the bracelet, exactly where I had never placed it. I stared in disbelief. Someone had planted it, but before I could explain, Daniel punched the wall beside my head. "Get out. This is my house." "No." His voice became ice cold. "You get away from my wife." He grabbed Ethan. Claire kept crying. Within minutes, my entire family believed I had stolen from my own daughter-in-law. 2 days later, every relative knew. Every cousin, every aunt, every neighbor. No one asked for my side. People don't enjoy hearing the truth. They enjoy hearing the version that feels more dramatic. Suddenly, I became the lonely old man who stole jewelry. 3 months later, I learned the truth. My next-door neighbor had security cameras facing the driveway. He apologized. "I didn't know if I should tell you." He showed me the recording. Claire walked out carrying the bracelet in her purse. 5 minutes later, she secretly returned alone. She slipped inside through the unlocked front door. Less than 2 minutes later, she walked back out without the bracelet. My knees nearly gave out. She had planted it. We finally had proof. I immediately called Daniel. He refused to answer. I mailed him the video. The envelope came back unopened. Return to sender. Then came the message. "Don't contact us again." That was the day I realized. He never wanted the truth. He wanted a reason to erase me. Years passed. Birthdays came and went. Every year I bought Ethan a present anyway. Toy trains, books, a baseball glove, a watch, a leather journal. None of them were ever delivered. Instead, I stored every gift inside a cedar chest in my attic, along with hundreds of letters I wrote but never mailed. Every letter began exactly the same. "Dear Ethan, if you're reading this someday, please know I never stopped loving you. When Ethan turned 8, I drove past his elementary school. Not to approach him, not to speak, just to see him from a distance. I watched children pouring out of the building. Then I saw him. He looked exactly like my son had at that age. Same brown hair, same smile, same habit of carrying too many books. For one impossible second, our eyes met. He frowned, as if trying to recognize someone. Before I could wave, Claire grabbed his shoulder. She looked directly at me, then whispered something into his ear. Ethan's expression changed instantly. He looked at me with fear. Real fear. He hid behind his mother. My heart shattered. Whatever she had told him, it was enough to make an innocent child afraid of his own grandfather. The years became quieter. I retired. My dog died. Friends passed away. The house became painfully silent. Some mornings, the only voice I heard was the television. I often wondered if anyone would even notice when I was gone. Then, on my 72nd birthday, a lawyer knocked on my door. My name is Richard Lawson. He carried a locked wooden box. Margaret's box, the one I thought had disappeared years ago. I've been instructed to give this back to you today. What? It belonged to your wife. Inside were dozens of documents Margaret had hidden before she died. Letters, bank records, medical files, and one sealed envelope. Across the front she had written, "For Ethan, open only on his 18th birthday." I stopped breathing. There was also another note. In Margaret's handwriting, "If Daniel ever keeps Ethan away from you, promise me he will know the truth when he becomes an adult." Tears blurred my vision. Margaret had seen this coming. She knew our grandson might one day grow up believing lies. And she had prepared for it. I finally understood why she had hidden the box. It contained something so explosive. It could destroy the entire family. I locked everything away again. Then I waited. For one day, one birthday, one final chance, Ethan's 18th birthday, and I silently prayed that fate would give me just one opportunity to place that locked box into my grandson's hands. For 18 years, I had counted birthdays the way prisoners count days. Every January, I crossed another date off the calendar and whispered the same sentence to myself. Just hold on a little longer. Now, that day had finally arrived. Ethan was 18, an adult, old enough to decide for himself what to believe. Or so I hoped. I barely slept. The night before his birthday, the old wooden box sat on my kitchen table. Its brass lock reflected the light from the lamp Margaret had once loved. I ran my fingers across the lid. Inside were documents, photographs, letters, and one secret that no one except Margaret and I had ever known. A secret Daniel and Claire had buried for nearly 2 decades. If Ethan read everything, nothing in his life would ever be the same. At exactly 7:15 that morning, I put on my only suit. It was the same gray suit I had worn to Margaret's funeral. The sleeves felt looser now. Age had taken its toll. My hands trembled as I picked up the box. What if he refuses to see me? What if he hates me? What if I'm too late? The questions never stopped. Still, I got into my old pickup truck and drove toward the address I had spent years pretending not to know. Daniel's house looked much bigger than I remembered. A newer car sat in the driveway. Fresh flowers lined the front porch. The family looked successful, happy, perfect, exactly the image they had always wanted the world to see. I parked across the street. For almost 20 minutes, I couldn't move. Then the front door opened. Guests began arriving. Balloons, birthday decorations, music, laughter. 18th birthday. The whole family was celebrating. Without me, just like every year before. I was about to drive away. Maybe this had been a mistake. Maybe Ethan didn't deserve to have his life turned upside down. Then I remembered Margaret's note. Promise me he will know the truth. I picked up the box, walked across the street, and knocked. Claire answered. The smile vanished from her face the moment she saw me. "You." Her voice became cold. "What are you doing here?" "I came to see my grandson." "You don't have a grandson." I looked directly into her eyes. "I think that's his decision now." She stepped outside, closing the door behind her. "You need to leave." "I won't." "Daniel," she shouted loudly. Within seconds, my son stormed outside. His face turned red. "I warned you 18 years ago." "I remember." "You aren't welcome. I didn't come for you." He folded his arms. "You came to ruin today." "No." I lifted the locked wooden box. "I came to keep a promise." Guests had begun watching from inside the house. Whispers spread through the room. Then, someone else appeared. A young man. Tall, broad shoulders, dark brown hair. Margaret's eyes. He looked so much like the little boy from that old photograph that I nearly forgot to breathe. Ethan. After 18 years, I was finally looking at my grandson again. He frowned. Who's that? Claire answered immediately. No one. I felt my heart crack. No one. 18 years. Reduced to 2 words. Ethan looked confused. I've seen him before. Daniel interrupted. Inside. But Ethan didn't move. Instead, he looked at me. Then at the box. What is that? I smiled gently. A birthday present. Claire stepped forward. Don't touch it. Daniel nodded. He's manipulating you. Ethan looked between all of us. The silence became unbearable. Finally he asked, who are you? I swallowed the lump in my throat. My name is James. I paused. I'm your grandfather. The entire party froze. No music. No conversations. Only silence. Claire laughed nervously. He's lying. I slowly reached into my pocket. Removed one old photograph. The picture of baby Ethan sitting on my lap. I handed it to him. His eyes widened. Where did you get this? Because I was there. He stared at the photo. Then back at me. Then at his parents. I've never seen this before. Daniel grabbed the picture. Enough. He tried tearing it. Ethan stopped him. Dad. Their eyes locked. Why are you ripping a photograph? Daniel couldn't answer. I carefully held out the locked wooden box. This belongs to you. Claire tried taking it first. I pulled it back. No, it's his. She smiled. We'll open it later. Again I shook my head. No, I promised your grandmother he would open it himself. The words hit Ethan differently. My grandmother? You mean, my grandmother knew you? I nodded. She loved you more than life itself. He looked shaken. I don't understand. You will. I placed the box into his hands. For 18 years, I've waited for this moment. Daniel suddenly reached for the box. Give me that. Ethan stepped back. No, I said give it here. Why? Because I said so. For the first time in his life. Ethan questioned his father. No, I'll decide. He noticed the small brass key taped underneath. He removed it. Everyone watched. No one spoke. The key slid into the lock. Click. The lid opened. Inside, dozens of neatly organized envelopes. Photographs, medical reports, property records, bank statements, letters tied together with a faded blue ribbon. And on top, one envelope, written in Margaret's elegant handwriting. To my beloved grandson, Ethan. His hands began shaking. So, my grandmother wrote this. Yes. When? Before she died. He slowly opened the envelope. The room became completely silent. Then he began reading aloud. My dear Ethan, if this letter has reached you, it means someone kept us apart. Claire suddenly whispered. No. Daniel's face turned pale. Ethan kept reading. I prayed every day that you would grow up knowing how deeply your grandfather loved you. If anyone ever tells you he abandoned you, they are lying. Ethan stopped. His breathing changed. He looked at his parents. What does this mean? Neither of them answered. He continued reading. The truth has been hidden from you because someone feared what would happen if you ever learned it. A tear rolled down Ethan's cheek. He had only reached the first page. There were 9 more, and underneath the letter, an envelope labeled, The Evidence. Ethan slowly lifted it, never imagining that what he was about to discover would destroy everything he believed about his family. The room was so quiet that the ticking of the wall clock sounded deafening. More than 30 guests stood frozen, their eyes fixed on the old wooden box in Ethan's hands. No one reached for a slice of birthday cake. No one touched the wrapped gifts piled on the table. Every breath in the room seemed to wait for what would happen next. Ethan slowly picked up the envelope marked, The Evidence. His fingers trembled. What is this? He whispered. I looked at him calmly. The truth. Daniel took one step forward. Don't open it. Ethan looked at his father. Why not? It doesn't matter anymore. I answered before Daniel could speak again. If it didn't matter, you wouldn't be trying so hard to stop him. Daniel's jaw tightened. Claire's face had turned ghostly white. For the first time in 18 years, they looked afraid. Not angry. Afraid. Ethan carefully opened the envelope. The first item was a DVD labeled, Security Camera, October 14th. Under it was a USB drive. Then several printed photographs. He picked up the photographs first. One showed Claire entering my house alone. Another showed her walking out only 2 minutes later. A third showed her carrying something in her purse before entering, and leaving without it. Ethan frowned. What is this? I spoke softly. The day I was accused of stealing your mother's bracelet. Claire immediately interrupted. Those pictures don't prove anything. They prove enough, I replied. Ethan continued looking. His expression slowly changed from confusion to disbelief. Then he found a typed report from a private investigator. He began reading silently. The investigator had verified the timestamps from the neighbor's security cameras. Every minute, every movement, everything matched. Claire had entered the house alone. No one else had. No bracelet had been missing until after she returned downstairs pretending to search for it. Ethan looked up. Mom. Claire's lips trembled. I can explain. You told me Grandpa stole from you. You said everyone saw it. She couldn't answer. Daniel stepped between us. Enough. No, Ethan replied firmly. I've waited 18 years without even knowing it. He turned another page. The next document was a notarized statement from our neighbor confirming he had voluntarily handed over the original video. Attached to it was the receipt showing that the video had been mailed to Daniel years earlier. Return to sender. Ethan stared at the unopened envelope. You refused to read it. Daniel lowered his eyes. It wouldn't have changed anything. It would have changed everything. The words echoed through the room. Several relatives exchanged nervous glances. Whispers began spreading among the guests. They lied. I can't believe this. Were we wrong all these years? But Ethan wasn't finished. He reached deeper into the box. Inside was a bundle of letters tied with a faded blue ribbon. Across the top was written, "Letters I wrote but could never send." He untied the ribbon. The first letter was dated. His first birthday. Dear Ethan, today you turn 1. I baked you a little cake anyway. I know you'll never see it, but I wanted to celebrate the little boy I already miss. Happy birthday. Love always, Grandpa. Ethan swallowed hard. He opened the next. Age 2. Then age 3. Then 4. Each birthday had its own letter. Each Christmas. Each graduation. Every important day of his life. Hundreds of handwritten pages. Never angry. Never bitter. Only love. By the 10th letter, Ethan could barely read through his tears. You wrote to me every year. I nodded. I never stopped being your grandfather. He looked around the room. Why didn't I ever get these? No one answered. Claire quietly sat down. Her hands covered her face. Daniel remained frozen. Ethan opened another envelope. Inside was a receipt. A toy train. Another. A baseball glove. Another. A bicycle. A graduation watch. Every birthday gift had been purchased. Every one had been returned or stored. Nothing had ever reached him. He whispered, "You remembered every birthday. I remembered every single one." The room was filled with quiet sobbing. Even relatives who had ignored me for years lowered their heads. Then Ethan reached the bottom of the box. There was one final sealed envelope. Its handwriting was different. Margaret's. Across the front were only 6 words. The secret your parents feared most. Daniel suddenly shouted, "Don't." Everyone jumped. It was the loudest anyone had heard him speak all afternoon. Ethan looked at him. His father wasn't angry anymore. He was terrified. Ethan slowly broke the seal. Inside was a folded document. And another handwritten letter from Margaret. He unfolded the first page. His eyes scanned the opening lines. Suddenly, his face went completely pale. His lips parted. No. He looked at Daniel. Then at Claire. Then back down at the paper. His voice cracked as he whispered, "This can't be true." The room held its breath. And I knew that, within seconds, the biggest secret our family had hidden for 18 years was finally about to be revealed. No one moved. No one even seemed to breathe. The paper in Ethan's trembling hands shook so violently that it made a soft rustling sound in the silent room. He looked at his father. Then at his mother. Finally, his eyes met mine. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Is this real?" I nodded slowly. "It is." Daniel suddenly stepped forward. "Don't believe everything you read." Ethan held up the document. "It has a hospital seal. It has signatures. It has legal records. What exactly am I not supposed to believe?" Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came out. Ethan unfolded Margaret's final letter. He began reading aloud. "My dearest Ethan, if you have reached this page, then you finally know that your grandfather never abandoned you. The greatest lie your parents ever told was not that he stole a bracelet. The greatest lie was convincing you that he stopped loving you. After my death, your grandfather wanted to remain in your life. He fought for you. He wrote to you. He bought gifts for every birthday. Every single one was kept from you. I begged your father not to erase him from your life, but he chose anger over truth. If you're reading this today, please don't waste your life carrying someone else's hatred. Find the truth for yourself. Forgiveness is your choice, but it should never be based on a lie." By the time Ethan reached the last sentence, tears streamed down his face. The room was silent except for quiet sobs. Then he picked up the hospital documents. The records confirmed that, after Margaret's death, I had petitioned for legal visitation with my grandson. There were copies of letters from my attorney, mediation requests, court filings. Every one of them had been refused. Not because I had been declared unfit. Not because I had committed any crime. But because Daniel had withdrawn from mediation and ended all contact before a judge could even hear the case. Ethan stared at his father. You told me Grandpa never wanted me. Daniel looked down. You told me he disappeared. Silence. You told me he chose money over family. More silence. You lied. Those two words hit harder than any scream. Claire finally broke. She buried her face in her hands and began crying uncontrollably. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never thought it would go this far. Ethan turned toward her. You helped keep me away from him. She nodded through tears. At first, I only wanted Daniel to choose our family. Then the lie became too big. I didn't know how to stop. Daniel's shoulders collapsed. For 18 years he had defended the story. Now, there was nowhere left to hide. He looked at me for the first time that day. Dad, his voice cracked. I'm sorry. I didn't answer immediately. I had imagined this moment for years. I thought hearing those words would heal everything. Instead, they only reminded me how much time had been lost. 18 years, Daniel. 18 birthdays. 18 Christmas mornings. You can't give those back. He closed his eyes. I know. Ethan slowly walked toward me. Every step felt unreal. When he finally stood in front of me, he asked the question I had dreamed of hearing for nearly 2 decades. Did you really keep writing to me? I smiled through tears. Every year. For every birthday. For every Christmas. For every milestone. I never stopped. He looked at the stack of letters again. Then, without saying another word, he wrapped his arms around me. For a moment, 18 years disappeared. I hugged my grandson for the first time since he had been a baby. Neither of us spoke. We simply stood there, holding onto the years we had lost. Around us, several family members quietly wiped away tears. Even those who had believed the lies realized they had judged the wrong person. As the birthday candles continued burning untouched on the cake, Ethan whispered. I can't get those years back. But I don't want to lose another day. I placed my hand gently on his shoulder. Neither do I. At that moment, the locked box had done exactly what Margaret hoped it would do. It hadn't erased the pain. But it had finally unlocked the truth. No one touched the birthday cake. The balloons hanging from the ceiling slowly swayed in the air conditioning, as if even they had forgotten this was supposed to be a celebration. Ethan was still standing beside me. For 18 years, we had been strangers. Now, after only a few minutes together, it felt as if we were trying to make up for a lifetime that had been stolen. Daniel sat down on a chair, staring at the floor. Claire quietly cried into a tissue. No one knew what to say next. Then Ethan looked back into the wooden box. I've read almost everything, he frowned. But there's one envelope left. I knew exactly which one he meant. The envelope Margaret had told me never to open. Across the front she had written, "Only after you know the truth." Ethan carefully broke the seal. Inside was a single handwritten letter. He unfolded it slowly. My dear Ethan, he read aloud, his voice shaking. If you've reached this letter, then you've already learned that your grandfather never abandoned you. But there is one more truth I couldn't tell you while I was alive. The room fell silent again. Your father wasn't always the man you know today. After my cancer diagnosis, fear changed him. He became obsessed with money, inheritance, and control. He believed he would lose everything if your grandfather refused to sell our home. Daniel squeezed his eyes shut. He already knew what was coming. The argument about the house was never really about the house. It was about greed. When your grandfather refused to sell, resentment took over. One lie became another, until the lies became your childhood. Ethan lowered the page. Dad. Daniel couldn't look at him. He simply whispered, I was angry. So angry that I convinced myself your grandfather deserved to lose everything. Tears rolled down his face. But I never imagined I'd lose you too. Ethan stood motionless. The man he had trusted his entire life had admitted that the family had been torn apart because of pride and greed. He looked at me. Grandpa, I answered softly. Yes, I'm sorry. There is nothing for you to apologize for. I believed the lies. You were a child. You believed the people who raised you. I gently placed my hand on his shoulder. The blame was never yours. Ethan broke down. For the first time since opening the box, he cried openly, without trying to hide it. I hugged him again. This time, he hugged me even tighter. Across the room, relatives who had ignored me for years slowly began walking over. My sister was the first. She took my hand with tears in her eyes. James, I'm sorry, I should have asked for your side. One by one, cousins, uncles, and family friends offered quiet apologies. Not because words could erase 18 years, but because the truth had finally reached them. Then Ethan wiped his eyes and looked at everyone gathered in the room. I've made a decision. Every face turned toward him. I can't change my childhood. I can't get back the birthdays. I can't replace the memories I never had. He looked at me and smiled through tears. But I can decide what happens next. He reached into the box one last time. At the very bottom was a small wrapped package. He opened it. Inside was the old wristwatch I had bought for his 18th birthday years earlier, never knowing if I'd ever be able to give it to him. I had engraved 4 simple words on the back. Time finds the truth. Ethan stared at the engraving for a long moment. Then he fastened the watch around his wrist. He looked at me. I'm going to wear this every day. I smiled. And every time I look at it, I'll remember the grandfather who never stopped loving me. The room filled with tears once again. Outside, the sun was beginning to set. Inside, a family that had been broken by lies had finally begun its long journey toward healing. For a long moment, no one spoke. Ethan kept looking at the watch on his wrist. Time finds the truth. The words seemed almost impossible now. For 18 years, the truth had been buried. Yet somehow, it had still found its way home. As everyone slowly gathered themselves, Ethan closed the wooden box. He looked at me. Grandpa, is this everything? I hesitated. No. His eyebrows lifted. There is one more thing. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a small silver key. Ethan recognized it immediately. The second key. I nodded. It opens a hidden compartment in the box. A wave of confusion swept across the room. There's another compartment? Ethan asked. Margaret had designed it herself years ago. Very few people even knew it existed. I turned the box over and pressed a tiny brass latch beneath the base. A soft click echoed through the room. A thin wooden panel slid open. Inside was a small flash drive. Nothing else. Just a single USB drive labeled in Margaret's handwriting. Play this last. Daniel's face instantly lost all color. Claire whispered under her breath. Oh, no. Ethan picked up the drive. What is on it? I answered quietly. I've never watched it. What? Margaret told me it was meant for you. And she made me promise never to open it. Ethan looked toward the television in the living room. Someone silently brought over a laptop. Within minutes, the USB drive was plugged in. One file appeared on the screen. Margaret_final_message.mp4. No one moved. Ethan clicked play. The screen faded in. Margaret appeared sitting in her favorite garden chair. She looked weak. Cancer had already taken much of her strength. But her smile was exactly the one I remembered. Hello, my sweet Ethan. If you're watching this, then you're finally old enough to know the truth. Several guests immediately began crying. Even after all these years, seeing her again felt unreal. She continued, I don't know whether I'll still be here when you grow up. But I want you to hear my voice one last time. She smiled softly. Your grandfather is one of the kindest men I've ever known. He isn't perfect. No one is. But he has loved this family every single day of his life. She paused for a moment to catch her breath. If someone tells you he walked away from you, they are lying. Ethan lowered his head. Tears dripped onto his hands. Margaret looked directly into the camera. Daniel, if you're watching this too, I still love you. You're my son. But if your anger has stolen your father's grandson, please stop. It's not too late. The room became completely silent. Daniel buried his face in his hands. Every word felt like a weight pressing against his chest. Then Margaret smiled again. Ethan, I have only one birthday wish for your 18th birthday. Give your grandfather one hug. Just one. He has been waiting longer than you can imagine. Ethan couldn't hold back anymore. He walked across the room. Without taking his eyes off the screen, he wrapped his arms around me once again. This time, the entire family began crying. Even relatives who had barely spoken to me in years were wiping away tears. The video continued. If you're hugging him right now. Margaret laughed softly. Then I got my birthday wish. A few people smiled through their tears. She always knew how to make people laugh, even while dying. Then her expression grew serious. Remember something, Ethan. Families aren't destroyed in one day. They're destroyed one lie at a time, but they can also be rebuilt. One act of forgiveness at a time. The screen slowly faded to black. The final words appeared. Love never abandons. No one spoke for nearly a full minute. The only sound in the room was quiet crying. Ethan finally looked up. He wiped his eyes, then turned toward his father. Dad, Daniel slowly stood. I know saying, "I'm sorry," isn't enough. It never will be, but if there's any chance at all, I want to spend the rest of my life earning forgiveness. Ethan didn't answer immediately. He simply looked at the people around him, then at me, and finally back at the wooden box that had changed everything. He realized the greatest gift he had received on his 18th birthday wasn't the watch, or the letters, or even the truth. It was the chance to choose what kind of family they would become from this day forward. 1 year passed, 365 days. For most people, it was just another year. For our family, it was the hardest year we had ever lived. Because once the truth comes out, you don't simply go back to normal. You learn to live with it. A week after Ethan's 18th birthday, he showed up at my house carrying 2 large boxes. I smiled. "What's all this?" He grinned. "I think these belong here." I opened the first box. Inside were every birthday gift his parents had kept hidden after finding them in the attic years earlier. The toy train, the baseball glove, the leather journal, the bicycle bell, the graduation watch box, even the little birthday cards I had written but never delivered. I couldn't hold back my tears. Ethan laughed softly. I figured they should finally reach their owner. "No," I whispered. "They've reached the person they were always meant for." Every Saturday after that, Ethan came over. Sometimes we worked in the garden. Sometimes we fixed old furniture in my workshop. Sometimes we didn't do anything at all. We simply sat on the porch drinking lemonade while talking about life. He asked me questions that 18 years of separation had stolen from us. What was Dad like when he was my age? Did Grandma really make the world's best apple pie? What was my first word? I answered every question, not because I wanted to replace the years we had lost, but because every answer built a bridge between our past and our future. One afternoon, Ethan opened the old leather journal I had bought him years ago. The first page was blank. He handed me a pen. "Grandpa, write something." I smiled. "What should I write?" He thought for a moment, then said, "Write the first memory you wish we'd shared together." So I wrote, "Today I finally taught my grandson how to plant a tree. I wish we'd done it when he was 5, but today is still a beautiful day." Ethan read the words and smiled. "Then let's make sure the next pages are filled with new memories." Not everyone healed as quickly. Daniel struggled the most. He came to my house several times. The first visit lasted less than 5 minutes. He stood on the porch, unable to meet my eyes. "I don't expect forgiveness. I know. I just wanted you to know. I've started seeing a therapist." I nodded. "That's a good place to begin." He quietly left. Months passed before he returned again. This time he brought a small cardboard box. Inside were dozens of old family photographs. Pictures of birthdays, vacations, Christmas mornings. Every photo that included me had been hidden away. I couldn't throw them out, Daniel admitted. I just couldn't bear looking at them. I slowly flipped through the photographs. There was one of Margaret laughing in the kitchen. Another of Daniel as a little boy, sitting on my shoulders. I smiled sadly. "Thank you for bringing these home." Claire also changed. She wrote a handwritten apology to every relative she had lied to. Some forgave her, some didn't. She accepted both. One afternoon she came to visit alone. She looked nervous. "I don't deserve your kindness." I offered her a cup of tea anyway. She cried before taking the first sip. "I've spent 18 years trying to justify what I did. But there is no justification." I quietly answered, "The truth is painful, but living a lie is even more painful." She nodded silently. As for Ethan, he never missed another Saturday. One weekend he arrived carrying a small wooden sign. He smiled. "I made this in my college workshop." He placed it beside the maple tree we had planted together. The sign read, "The Second Chance Tree." Underneath it, in smaller letters, "Because love waited 18 years. I stared at those words for a long time. Then I hugged him. "You know, I think your grandmother would have loved this." He smiled toward the sky. "I think she's smiling already." That evening, as the sun disappeared behind the hills, I realized something. The 18 years we lost would never come back. But they no longer controlled us. The lies had shaped our past. The truth would shape our future. And for the first time in nearly 2 decades, Our family was finally beginning to feel like a family again. 5 years later, the old maple tree in my front yard had grown tall and strong. Its branches stretched across the yard, casting cool shade over the wooden bench beneath it. The little sign Ethan had made was still there. The second chance tree. Every time I looked at it, I remembered the day everything changed. Not because a secret was uncovered, but because love finally became louder than lies. Ethan had graduated from college. On graduation day, he walked across the stage wearing the same watch I had given him on his 18th birthday. Time finds the truth. After the ceremony, hundreds of families gathered for photographs. Ethan ignored the photographers for a moment. Instead, he walked straight toward me. "Grandpa, will you stand beside me?" My eyes filled with tears. "I thought you'd ask your parents first." He smiled. "I already did, but today, I want the first picture to be with the man who waited 18 years just to hug me again." The camera clicked. That photograph became my favorite picture of all time. Daniel stood a few feet away. He watched us quietly. When Ethan finished taking pictures with me, he walked over to his father. Without saying a word, he hugged him too. Healing wasn't instant. It had taken years, but it had finally begun. Daniel later told me, "I'll spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of being your son again." I placed my hand on his shoulder. "Don't spend your life proving it. Spend your life living it." Claire dedicated herself to helping families going through conflict. She volunteered at a community counseling center, encouraging parents to choose honesty over pride. One afternoon she told me, "I can't erase what I did, but maybe I can stop another family from making the same mistake." For the first time in years, I believed her. On my 80th birthday, Ethan organized a surprise family dinner. Everyone came. The cousins, the neighbors, old friends, even relatives who had once believed the lies. As I looked around the table, I realized something remarkable. The empty chair beside me, the one that had belonged to Margaret, was decorated with a single white rose. Ethan noticed me looking at it. He smiled softly. Grandma should still have a place at every family gathering. No one argued. No one spoke. We simply nodded. She was gone, but her love had never left us. After dinner, Ethan stood up holding the old wooden box. The same box that had changed his life. He looked around the room. "I've been thinking about this for a long time." He opened the lid. Inside were the letters, the photographs, the documents, everything. He carefully placed one final envelope inside. Across the front he had written, "To the next generation of our family." Everyone watched in silence. He smiled. "I don't want this box to become a box of pain anymore. I want it to become a box of truth. If my children ever wonder where this family came from, they'll know. They'll know that lies almost destroyed us, but forgiveness saved us." A few months later, my health began to fail. The doctors told me my heart was getting weaker. I wasn't afraid. For 18 years, I had feared dying before seeing my grandson again. Now, that fear was gone. One quiet evening, Ethan sat beside me on the porch. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. He asked, "Grandpa, do you regret anything?" I smiled. "I regret the years we lost. But I don't regret waiting. Because waiting led me back to you." He reached over and squeezed my hand. "And you never gave up." I looked at him with a smile. Real love doesn't give up. It waits. Several weeks later, surrounded by family, I closed my eyes for the last time. There were no arguments, no lies, no bitterness, only love. At my funeral, Ethan stood beneath the maple tree and addressed everyone who had gathered. He held the old wooden box in one hand. The watch I had given him was still on his wrist. He looked at the crowd and said, "My grandfather lost 18 years because of a lie. But he never let that lie change the kind of man he was. He taught me that the truth may be delayed, but it should never be abandoned. If you love someone, tell them today. Tomorrow is never promised." When he finished speaking, there wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. Years later, Ethan would tell his own children the story of the locked box. Not as a story about betrayal, not as a story about loss, but as a story about hope. Because sometimes, the greatest inheritance a grandparent can leave behind isn't money. It isn't a house. It isn't jewelry. It's the courage to tell the truth. And the love to keep waiting until someone is finally ready to hear it. The funeral ended just before sunset. One by one, the guests walked away from the cemetery in silence. Some carried flowers. Some carried memories. Only Ethan carried the old wooden box. He refused to let anyone else hold it. not because it was valuable, but because it had become the heart of his family's story. 3 days later, Ethan returned to my old house. The porch swing still creaked in the wind. The coffee mug I had forgotten to wash was still sitting beside the kitchen sink. Everything looked exactly as I had left it. For a moment, he expected me to walk through the front door smiling and say, "You're early today." Instead, there was only silence. He stood in the living room for several minutes before finally sitting in my favorite chair. On the small table beside it was an envelope. It hadn't been there before. Across the front, in my handwriting, were 5 simple words. For Ethan, if I'm gone. His heart began to pound. With trembling hands, he opened it. Inside was my final letter. My dear Ethan, if you're reading this, then my journey has ended. Don't be sad for me. I lived long enough to see my grandson smile again. That was the greatest gift God ever gave me. Tears rolled down Ethan's face. He continued reading. There's one last favor I'd like to ask. Don't let our family's story end with pain. Tell your children the truth, but don't teach them to hate. Teach them to forgive. Hatred is inherited only when someone chooses to pass it on. Love can be passed on too. Ethan folded the letter against his chest. For several minutes, he simply cried, not because he felt alone, but because he finally understood the kind of man his grandfather had always been. A man who had every reason to become bitter, yet never did. Over the following weeks, Ethan carefully sorted through everything in the house. Old books, family photographs, Margaret's recipe cards, my woodworking tools, every object carried a memory. In the attic, he found a dusty notebook labeled Family Dreams. Inside were handwritten plans I'd made years earlier. One page caught his attention. It was titled, Things I Hope to Do with Ethan Someday. The list included, teach him to fish, watch his first baseball game, help him drive his first car, show him how to plant an oak tree, dance at his wedding, hold his first child. Some items had tiny checkmarks beside them. Others remained empty. Ethan gently closed the notebook. I'll finish this list for you, Grandpa, he whispered. A month later, the entire family gathered again. This time, not for a funeral, but for something completely different. Daniel stood in front of everyone. His hands shook as he spoke. For 18 years, I asked all of you to believe my version of the story. You did. Today I'm asking something much harder. He took a deep breath. Please forgive my father. He never deserved what happened to him. The room remained silent. Then one by one, relatives stood up. Some cried, some apologized, some admitted they had judged without asking questions. The healing wasn't perfect, but it was real. That evening, Ethan carried the locked wooden box to the maple tree. He buried a small time capsule beneath it. Inside he placed one of Grandpa James's letters, a photograph of Grandpa and Grandma Margaret, the engraved watch box, a copy of the family picture taken on Ethan's graduation day. On top of everything, he added one handwritten note. It read, if you are reading this many years from now, remember one thing, never believe only one side of a story. Ask, listen, love, the truth is always worth finding. He sealed the capsule and covered it with soil. Then he looked up at the branches of the tree. The wind gently rustled the leaves. For just a moment, it almost sounded like someone whispering, I'm proud of you. Ethan smiled through his tears. I miss you too, Grandpa. From that day forward, every birthday, the family gathered beneath the second chance tree. Not to remember the lies, but to celebrate the truth that finally brought them home. And every year, before cutting the birthday cake, Ethan would unlock the old wooden box, read one of his grandfather's letters aloud, then close the lid again with a smile. Because some stories don't end when a person is gone. They continue in every life they touched. The true legacy of the locked box was never the secret inside. It was the love that waited 18 years to be found.